Welcome to our genealogy club. Tonight we're joined by Jean King, who is on the board of the Genealogy Federation of Long Island, and she's also on the board of the German Genealogy Group. Jean has over 30 years of genealogy research, and she's taught classes at different libraries. So welcome tonight, Jean. Thank you for being here.
Hi, everybody. I'm a librarian over at the West Hempstead Library, and that's where I met Erin, actually. So it was very nice of her to ask me to come give a talk to your group. So tonight I'm going to talk about looking for vital records in New York, and I'm going to switch the screen over. And okay. Okay, and everyone can see this all right?
Yes.
Okay, yes. Great. Okay, so looking for vital records in New York can be a bit complicated, which is why I made this handout, and I sent Erin a PDF of it.
I'll email this to everybody after the program.
Right, so you don't have to be scrambling to take notes or anything, because I'll just be working from the handout here. So in New York State, they do have restrictions on who can get birth, marriage, and death records, and who has to wait for them. They divide up, the records are released to you based on whether you're a direct line ancestor or another relative, or even not related to the person. So a direct line ancestor is someone who's considered to be a child, grandchild, great or great-grandchild of the person whose records you're requesting. And right now, if you're not a direct line ancestor, there are waiting periods before you can request records. So currently, the waiting period is 75 years after the birth of a person, and that person must be deceased. Death records are 50 years after the death of the person, and marriage records 50 years after the marriage, and both people must be deceased. Now, here on Long Island, there are different rules for Nassau and Suffolk County. So you need to know how things work in each county in order to know where the correct place is to go to look for records. In Nassau County, we have marriage licenses issued by the 3 towns in the 2 cities. And birth and death records are handled by towns, cities, and incorporated villages. The exception to this rule is that for a short period of time between 1908 and April of 1935, Nassau County Clerk's Office also received copies of marriage records. And I can show you where an index for this is on the German Genealogy Group page. But I also wanted to point out that if you go to this link here on Guide to Obtaining Vital Records, it's a very nice booklet that was put out by Nassau County's Clerk's Office explaining where you can get vital records in different towns, villages in Nassau County. I don't know if anybody can see. Oh, it's probably, oh, it's going to come out reverse, but there is a little booklet they put out. And this link will take you right to that booklet. But we'll take a quick look over here to the German genealogy website. And if you go over to our databases and click down over here to say birth record, oops, Nassau County, sorry. Nassau County, Nassau and Suffolk marriages, they do have an index that you can search that covers just this time period of 1904 to 1939. And when you do a search, and this is the same for all of the indexes on the site, you know, you put in, let's just do a quick search. when you do a search, down here in documents and forms, it'll actually give you the form for Nassau or Suffolk County to request a copy of a marriage record. So we take some of the guesswork out of it for you. There is yet another exception to Nassau County marriage records, and that you can find them for this short time period of 1908 to 1915 on the FamilySearch.org website if you go to the collection called New York County Marriages 1847 to 1848, 1908 to 1936, and you can actually browse the collection or you can search by name. Family Search does not have that for Suffolk County, just for Nassau. In Suffolk County, birth, marriage, and death records are kept by the 10 town clerks. And this link here will take you to Suffolk County's listing of the 10 towns and what villages fall under each town. When I did research many years ago in Suffolk County, even though the state fee for a vital record is $22, I lucked out and was able to get some of them for as little as $10. But whether that's still true, I don't know. It did happen a while ago, and it actually happened when I went to the Village of Rockville Center too. I was able to get a death certificate for $10, but they're supposed to be charging $22. Now again, Suffolk County can also be found in that index we just looked at the German genealogy group for that same time period. And also the Suffolk County clerk, again, like Nassau, does have some marriage records.
Before you go on,
yeah,
those records are not just German, right? It would be.
No, it's no for everybody.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
It's really New York City records. Not, I know people think that maybe it's just Germans, but the Italian genealogy group has records that are just Italians, but the German group does it for everybody. We're not specific to Germans. So yeah, so the Suffolk County Clerk's Office, when you request a marriage record for them, sometimes it's an affidavit, which would be a longer form, and sometimes it's only an abstract, depending on what year you're requesting. Now, in New York State, record keeping didn't start until 1881. Oh, it wasn't required by law, I should say, till 1881. So the vital records that are in Albany begin in 1881 and not before that. In Albany, you won't find any records from the 5 boroughs of New York City, except for Queens and Staten Island birth records that they have from 1881 to 1897. And the reason it's cut off at 1897 is because in 1898, Queens, Brooklyn, and Staten Island became part of the 5 boroughs of New York. Also in Albany, you won't find records from Albany, Buffalo, or Yonkers until the beginning of 1914. So for records from 1881 to 1914, for those cities, you would have to try the local registrar or the city clerk. So let's take a look at, I think it's this one. Oops, sorry, this tab. This is the Department of Health website in Albany, and this explains about ordering records from Albany. And there's their search fee. This is the application form you could print out, and the information about Albany, Buffalo, and Yonkers. And again, here they're stating those rules we talked about earlier. So the problem with ordering things from Albany is that right now there's an 8-month waiting period. So you really don't want to order things from Albany if you don't have to. So it's a lot better to order it from your local county clerk, or the other places we talked about, the towns, the villages, and the cities. The backlog in Albany had been almost 2 years at one point. So I guess 8 months isn't terrible. So some indexes for New York State are available on ancestry.com and also on this website called Internet Archive. And I've given you the link for that over here. And the indexes for New York State that you would find really useful on Ancestry are the New York State Birth Index, the New York State Marriage Index, and the New York State Death Index. And then here are the years, for each one, up to 1942 for births, up to 1964 for marriages, and up to 1956 for deaths. Again, this is just for New York State, we're not talking about New York City. And where this ends in 1956, it actually picks up on a separate website, which is 1957 up to 1970 now. That's available at this link, which is the one we're going to click on over here. So this is, again, not New York City. This is just for New York State. And as you scroll over, like here's the year of death, but it'll give you the person's exact date of death. And then it just, at this point, it goes up to 1970, and they tend to add the years at the beginning of the year. So right now, because of the 70-year embargo on death certificates, you can only find someone in this database up to 1970. And the next year, it'll be 1971 and 72 the year after that. They add the information on a yearly basis. Now, the trick to this one, though, is that you need to know there's a residence code down here in this column, because they don't tell you, they don't spell out the town where the person died. And it's kind of tricky because you have to go into this tab over here that says About. And when you click on it and scroll down, there's a gazetteer. And when you open up this gazetteer, you have to take the number that you find in this column, go to the county that the person died in, and then figure out what the number translates to using the gazetteer. Okay. So it's possible, it's just you have to know to look for that gazetteer. So let's go on to New York City. New York City is a whole different ballgame. And it's very complicated. So again, if we go back over to the German Genealogy Group page, oops, sorry, let me scroll up. You will see that we have an index here for New York City births. And there's another category called a birth index for early New York City towns. I just wanted to point this out because when we go into here, the early New York City towns are considered the towns that were in Brooklyn, Queens, and Staten Island before 1898. So you would have to search in this particular index if you're looking for somebody that would fall in this time period in Queens, Brooklyn, or Staten Island. And we also, with the marriages, it's the same thing. We have early New York City marriages, and we have early New York City deaths. Then for the rest of New York City, right, over here on this index, we have New York City births, and it shows you that in Manhattan, the index goes back as far as 1858, which is really, really good. But this index ends in 1909 because these records are kept at the Municipal Archives in Manhattan, and they only have birth records until 1909 because the New York City Department of Health has any birth records after that. And the grooms and brides index, again, you'll see on our index the year that some of them start. Manhattan can go back to 1866. Brooklyn, they can go back to 1871. And for death records, we want to look over here. And again, Manhattan can go back as far as 1867. So it's, you know, check with that when you do the index, check which years are covered in it so you know that you're looking in the right place. And we did add in our index as well, we have some Brooklyn Navy Yard burials, Brooklyn Navy Hospital deaths. So we have, and even Siemens deaths. So it's good to take a look around the database so you can see the different types of indexes that we have. So we talked about, I don't know why, there we go. Okay, so these are the early New York City records. So Municipal Archives over on Chambers Street has birth records up to, but not including 1910, deaths prior to 1949, and marriage records prior to 1950. And I have a link to their website. You can order documents by mail, or you can have them emailed to you. When you go to their order page, this is what it looks like. And then you would, you know, click down to say which one you would like to purchase. And it's $18.50, I believe. You're going to order this online. And they're telling you that, you know, look at their indexes online to give them as much information as possible when you're filling out your request. So that way they know that they're giving you the record that you're looking for. Okay, so records after this time period that are not at the Municipal Archives are over at the New York City Department of Health on Worth Street. About 2.5 years ago, the Department of Health decided that it was going to change the requirements for getting a copy of someone's birth record. And they changed it from 75 years after the person's birth to 125 years. So a lot of genealogists were very unhappy about this, but this is the way it is for now. There was a big public hearing about this, and hundreds of people showed up, and basically it didn't make a lot of difference. They just changed it anyway. So when you're requesting a birth certificate of someone, you have to fall into one of these categories, or they will not give it to you. So you have to be a spouse, domestic partner, parent, child, sibling, niece, nephew, aunt, uncle, grandchild, grandniece, grandnephew, or great-grandchild. And if you're not one of those categories, you can't get it. So on their website, to order this, I found something new that I had never seen before. Is besides having to fill out the birth certificate application and send them a copy of the death certificate of the person, now you also have to complete a family tree. when they added this, I don't know, but it had to have been fairly recently. And they do say that you can order it online. And it's saying that, and if you want to order it by mail, right now on their website, it's saying it can take up to 5 months. And good luck with that, because even before they made these changes, it was almost impossible to get a birth certificate out of them. And now, with all these other requirements, I'm not sure how successful people are going to be. But let's go over to theirs. So this is what the site would look like. And down here, you have to order it. Oh, I'm sorry. With the birth certificates, you have to order it by mail if you're using it for genealogy purposes. You can only order it online, I believe, if it's for yourself. But here's their instructions on what the fee is. It can only be a money order or a check, stamped addressed self-envelope, all that stuff. And here's the application that has to be notarized. But it's a bit of an ordeal. And with the death records from New York City, right now it had been a 50-year waiting period, and they changed it to 75. And again, these are $15. They have to be notarized. And they made up a list now of people who may request the cause of death on the death certificate can only be these people on this list: the spouse, the domestic partner, parent, child, sibling, grandparent, grandchild, informant, or person in charge of disposition. But you can request a copy of a death certificate that doesn't show the cause of death if you fall into this other group of niece, nephew, aunt, uncle, great-grandchild, grandniece, grandnephew. And on their website, oh, sorry, come on. Okay, it's set up in a similar way. And again, it shows you how to order them, the death certificate application. I have to say, for this class, I actually used this link that said order a death certificate online and put in a relative of mine who had died less than 75 years ago, and it didn't stop me. So you may be able to order it online and not pay attention to the 75-year waiting period. I got all the way to the part where it said put in your credit card number. So I think that you can probably get away with it. So it's worth a shot. If it's something that you're interested in, you might want to give it a try. Now with marriage records, they are not at the Department of Health, but they're actually at the city clerk's office. But there's an interesting thing that happened in the city between 1908 and 1937. And that was that two different agencies were doing marriage records. So the Department of Health collected marriage records up to 1937. And you can find quite a bit of information on these, right? Our names, the addresses, the groom's occupation, father's name, mother's maiden name, number of marriage, place and date of marriage, witnesses, and the person officiating the ceremony. But if you also get a copy of the city clerk's marriage license, you would get the birthplace of the bride and groom, the mother and father's country of birth, the bride's occupation, former spouses who are living or dead, or if the applicant is divorced, when and where the divorces took place. And I actually, I got a city clerk's marriage license for one of my great uncles, and it sure enough showed him being divorced and when that happened. And I had always suspected he was divorced, but this confirmed it. So it's really good to get both of them if you can. These Department of Health certificates you would request from municipal archives. And the city clerk copies are, I'll get down to that, at 1 Center Street. Come on. So the city clerk has marriages from 1950 onward. But because, again, of the waiting period, you can't request a copy of a marriage if it's not your own. If it's been less than 50 years, you need to submit a copy of the death certificate of both people on the marriage record. And I have done it, and they've given it to me. So it does work with them. And their information is on this website. And right now, all marriage record requests have to be done by mail because they're still not taking walk-ins. And you would just, it takes you just to the link to how to do it by mail. There's also one other set of records, and these are New York City Marriage License Index. So the license is not the same as the marriage record. This is only the license application that they filled out, and they may or may not have gone on to get married. But again, we have this over on the German genealogy website. Where's our New York City marriage licenses? Okay, and I have a relative in here. Okay, so this will show you, it doesn't give you a date, but for the marriage license, it does give you the year they were married and the borough. And again, like this is it links you to a form that you could fill out for a request for a marriage license. So now what I thought I could do, so that's the end of the handout. But if you're, okay, I was going to show you this one website. This website from the Center of Disease Control is really helpful if you're looking for vital records from anywhere in the country. And we click on New Jersey, for example, it'll give you where to write to, how much the cost is, if there's any kind of restrictions. And what I like a lot about this site is that if you go down to the bottom of the page, way down in the bottom corner, it tells you when they last updated it. So sometimes it could have been very recently, so sometimes it could have been years ago. So you want to know when they updated it last, so you know how up to date their information is. Now, I can't get into the Oceanside Ancestry account because I don't have an Oceanside library card. But I just wanted to show you real quick, if we went to Ancestry, okay, I was just telling Erin that the Ancestry remote access is going to be free now until the end of December. So if you go over to the card catalog, and we just put in, yeah, if you go through the card catalog, you can see the types of records that Ancestry might have pertaining to New York, births, marriages, and deaths. We've got, actually, the better way to do it is if we put in New York State. Oh, sorry. All right, it's not being nice to me tonight. We'll go back to what I had. But the card catalog on Ancestry is a good way to see what they have on a different topics. So there's birth certificate indexes, there's a birth index down here. You even get some church records. So you can play around with the Ancestry catalog and just see what they might have for New York State. So, and of course you want to look, New York is only going to apply to the city, you know, versus New York State. So just, you know, be careful which one you're opening up depending on what you're looking for. And then I wanted to go over to family search real quick. And with family search, if you go up here to the records and you go down to collection title, and we start typing in New York, you'll see they have New York births and christenings, New York deaths. Oh, sorry. Sorry, let me get back. They have deaths and burials, marriages. And it's always good to look at both Ancestry and Family Search because they don't have identical collections. So you may find something on one that you don't find on the other. See, on Family Search, you have church records, church and civil marriages and deaths. And here's, you know, the county marriages. And when you open up the collection, it'll have a description on the top, so you have an idea of what's in each of their collections. And Ancestry does the same thing, it's just on the bottom of the collection page. So let me, oh, I was gonna stop sharing. Oh. So were there
questions? Let me stop the recording.
Hmm?
I'm gonna stop the recording.
Oh, okay. Yeah.